Welcome to Outside the Box with Asendia USA, a podcast educating US-based e-tailers on international shipping topics and how they can expand their global e-commerce footprint.
Welcome back to the Outside the Box with Asendia USA podcast. I'm John Walsh. I'm here with my co-host, Nick Agnetti, for episode 6, believe it or not, already this year. The topic today is e-PAQ returns by Asendia. Nick and I have been in the business a long time. Returns is a huge part of any business and e-com environment. But what you know is you got to be successful in the e-commerce world. You got to have I think the wording that we're seeing in a lot of presentations is some clarity on how the process works and how transparent it is for customers. It's a key factor in improving customer experience, as well as maintaining customer loyalty, I guess would be the word, and improving it. Those two factors are key to keep people from continuing to buy from you as a brand. Having your brand associated with domestic returns is one thing, global returns is another, which is we're going to talk about today. It's interesting to me, and my background had been mostly domestic. I know Nick is primarily international. But the domestic returns business is a huge business. I know we're going to touch on some things that Nick highlighted for me earlier. Was obviously, it's a pay-for business, and it's been free for a lot of years. Now it's maybe paradigms maybe shifting. We're going to cover that in during the next 25 minutes or so. But there's a lot of changes in the returns, so we thought it'd be a good opportunity to bring on two fantastic guests to talk about this product. We have Helen Scurfield, who is the CEO of Asendia Global Returns. And we also have Aloni, who is the e-PAQ returns manager for the Asendia US group that Nick and I work with. We thought it'd be a great opportunity to have both of their expertise when we talk about what's going on in this area. But we're going to try to help you understand the process of how returns work, and assist you who maybe already have global returns and are looking for some advice or some clarity on how maybe to improve the process, or if you're a brand or a company that wants to get into the providing global returns. So we think there's two things that we can help here. But before we dive in, I'll pass it over to my co-host. He had a couple things he wanted to cover before we went in, I think are pertinent to what we're going to be talking about. You're up, Nick.
John, I want to thank you for that intro. That was, first off, that was beautiful. Okay, and
that's the first time you gave me kudos. Thank you. It's only 6 episodes in. Yeah, but that's okay. I'll take.
Well, you got to earn your keep. You know what I mean? So that's just the way it goes. Okay. All right, folks. So Helen and Ari, thank you so much for joining us today. So I pulled some facts from random websites on the internet, completely uncredentialed. No, I'm just kidding. But I did pull some information. You guys being the experts, you may say, well, that's not true. My hope is that this lines up with just about everything that you're seeing out there too. But so just to paint a picture for everybody, when we talk today, we're talking about the importance of international returns for e-commerce shippers. So we at Asendia, we do have a global product, our e-PAQ returns product, which Helen heads up that the entire model, the entire process and department, if you will. And Ari works here alongside, like John said, in the Asendia USA side. And so fantastic resources for today. But here's a couple of stats just in terms of highlighting the importance, right? So returns market data 2024. Interestingly enough, 30% of all products ordered online are returned on average, as compared to about 8.8 to 9% in brick and mortar store purchases. I thought that was a pretty substantial number. So clothing or apparel has the highest return rate among all e-commerce verticals, with over 56% of total returns. Now, I'm not sure if we're seeing that on the cross-border side, but I think just in intra-US, those are numbers that they're pulling there. I'm sure the number is very high for cross-border as well. The average e-commerce return rate is between 20 to 30%, depending on the industry. And 27% of e-commerce shoppers abandon their cart when the return process is unclear or complicated. which is one of the things that we're here to talk about, and and the product that we put together, which is e-PAQ returns. And then lastly, and I don't know if this number is just again, if these uncredentialed websites that I'm pulling this information from is not correct, but correct me if I'm wrong. This is e-commerce return rates are expected to grow by up to 1.4 trillion by 2025 to 2027. I don't know if we're seeing that, but all I know is that e-commerce returns seems to be not only a hot topic, but a bona fide issue and a need in the industry when it comes to e-commerce logistics. So, John, I don't know if you want to start and just if you've got anything that you've got teed up any questions or things that you're curious about, but or I can get started. It's up to you. You're on mute, John. Sorry, folks, technical difficulties here.
All the things you say sound, obviously you picked it from a lot of different websites. It seems to validate what everybody thinks is going on in the market, so it sounds pretty accurate to me. I would say, in addition to that, eShopWorld and Asendia just put out this, I think they call it the Global Voices report that I know we were looking at yesterday. It's a lot of pertinent information in there that we could share with the audience if they wanted it. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is interesting. I think a couple of things that I highlight there were what did you say that if you left the shopping cart, was it 27%?
27%. So you think about that, that's 1 out of every 4 people? Yeah. Is that, I mean, that's crazy.
Did you, and off topic, I know you have some stats there. What did it say if you didn't show what your clear process was? Did it say, was there a percentage of people, is that the reason they left? Because it may not have been free, right?
27% of e-commerce shoppers abandon their cart when the returns process is unclear or complicated.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's validating what the eShopWorld Asendia report said, which is basically 20. To your point, I think you said 27. I think that was the highest number. Some of the others were if you charged maybe the 20-some% left, but the highest amount was if it wasn't a clear process. So that's a good that's a really good call out by you. So what we'll do is, I know we had some questions for you guys, so why don't we break it down these 4 buckets and make it easier, and we can weave the questions in, Helen, if that's okay, and Ari?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So the first topic would be, what is your definition of easy returns? What does that exactly mean for a shopper?
Okay, I think for me, it's really about making it as simple as almost returning it to a store or that domestic experience. I think there's a view that international returns is not simple. You've got customs in the way. Items have got to travel a long way. It's expensive, but really, from a retailer perspective, it's selling to a consumer, and then for that consumer just to be able to send it back, to be able to get their refund quickly, to be able to see that their item is making it back to the retailer because they just want the money back, and then potentially shop again or whatever. So the more barriers you put up, because maybe they've got to fill in paperwork or mail it back, go to the post office and stick it in the mail and pay for it themselves, it starts to deter people. And it's really about making that experience just as easy as possible so that you buy, you try on, doesn't fit, don't like it, and back it goes. Really as simple as taking it back to the store.
Gotcha.
So, John, real quick. So Helen, one of the questions I have written down, which is really interesting, was number 1 is, why is returns transparency vitally important for online brands? And you just spoke to a ton of that too. And one of the things that we have as a resounding, sort of theme in many of our episodes that we drop is we're focused on how can online brands improve the customer experience. And that is, I think this is a huge point of contention in terms of returns being sort of a little bit of that, sore spot sometimes too. And you just brought up some excellent points with, they want their money back, but also at the same time, the retailers, they want the goods back too. And so, excellent information. Is there anything else that you could think of when it comes to just the transparency when it comes to returns that you could speak on?
I think
can I dovetail on that? So
get after it, John.
The thing I was impressed the most was the dashboard, right? So is that, and the customer facing tools, because to your point and Nick's point is customers they think it's difficult. So how do you feel the dashboard it's fantastic. So I was just curious what your thoughts are on that and just to dovetail on what Nick said.
Okay, so I guess there's two sides of the transparency. You've got the transparency from the shopper's side. So being able to go onto a portal, be able to create that return, get a label or whatever, and then see where the parcel is. But just making it self-serve and without too many steps. And then on the other side, you've got the retailer transparency, and that's the dashboard you were talking about. So that's then having that analytics so that the retailer can say, okay, why am I getting returns back? Why is my return rate in Germany super high? Have I got certain SKUs that are coming back all the time or for particular reasons? Maybe then I've actually got a problem in my supply chain. Perhaps there's a quality issue with the product. It's really about giving the retailer that visibility into that returns piece and then understanding how they can improve it. Because ultimately, yes, we offer, e-PAQ returns. It's a return service, but really we're about helping retailers reduce returns. It's as a retailer, you want to sell it and want that product to stay with the consumer. You don't really want it back because it is a headache for everybody. And that's where I think the analytics and the power of those dashboards are really about helping the retailer, give them that visibility, gives them the transparency so that they can then take action in terms of improving their offer to the consumers and getting that repeat business.
Yeah, that's John, real quick. I do want to, and thank you, Helen, for that too. So for the listeners that are listening and not watching, John mentioned a dashboard. So we don't have anything up to show you right now what we're talking about. What we're talking about, if you're a retailer utilizing our product, the e-PAQ returns product, what John was alluding to is there is a dashboard that you log into to be able to manage the returns process, and it's quite robust, and that's what Helen was talking about on the second end of what she was saying in terms of what the retailer experience is versus the consumer, meaning the person that purchased the goods. And so that I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that before we got too deep into things here.
The other thing on the analytics, Helen, is that done monthly, weekly when we get into this with our potential shippers? How's that done? I'm just curious.
It's real time. So, and it has filters on there, so you can pull the range of data that you really want it to be looked at, and you could filter it by country, by certain products, or if you've got multiple brands. So it's really that flexibility to be able to drill into it on the scale that you need.
And on the customer side, on the customer-facing tools, is there anything that stands out that differentiates us from other carriers or other providers that you can think of that would really help?
I think it's the white label solution. So it is fully branded as a retailer. It looks like it belongs to the retailer's site, with the logos, the fonts or whatever. And it is simple. You put in your order number and your email, you're selecting what you're returning and you're getting your label. You can choose where you're dropping it off. You can get a QR code. So it's just simple. It takes a couple of minutes to just run through the process.
Gotcha. Okay. Nick, anything else on that? I know you had a couple of questions around enterprise, middle market, that kind of thing. Do you want to touch on that?
I only have maybe 20 to 30 questions, guys. So get ready. No, I'm kidding.
We're only on topic. We're on topic number 1, by the way, but that's okay. We'll get there.
What do you say? Topic number 1.
We're on 4. There's 4 main topics, but this is the longest one. But please go on.
I'm going to continue. So, Helen, when we're talking in terms of our listening audience is going to be primarily U.S. based. So from a U.S. based seller or consumer, one thing we talk about the experience, right? Free returns have been the norm, and there's a very large marketplace out there with that mentality, right? In terms of they've been the norm for years in e-commerce is free returns, but it's costly, it impacts profitability. And so what are some things brands can do to help, in terms of the mindset shift, in terms of getting away from, free to, it's okay to have paid returns, and here's why it's okay.
Okay. So I think firstly, it will vary by market. So some markets are more receptive to paying for a return, others less so. There are things that sellers can do around perhaps even monitoring their consumers. So ASOS, for example, in the UK, are tackling serial returners by either preventing them or levying an additional charge. We've seen retailers introduce the concept of a membership fee. You pay premium service, you maybe get free delivery for your outbound, and maybe it gives you free returns as well. You can offer choice. So maybe sending back the return through the postal service could be funded by the retailer, but if the consumer would like it, get it back quicker, so they get their refund quicker, they could pay to upgrade and access the likes of a FedEx or a UPS type service.
Okay.
I think there are a number of options, but it is also very much about understanding the market and the demographic you're targeting, because in the reports that John referred to earlier, statistically, we've seen like baby boomers are less likely to want to pay for returns, whereas Gen Z are willing to do so. So it's who you're selling to, what country you're selling to, even what goods. So potentially with the higher value goods, again, you might want to maybe levy a bit more of a charge because you're accessing the express service. So there's a number of factors to take into consideration, but so it's possibly not one size fits all, but then the ability to do localization, targeting your returns policy by country does give you then that flexibility as a retailer.
Helen, I want to thank you for that, but also I'm a little upset because you stole my thunder on my 3 out of 20 questions. No, it's okay. No, my next question was simply: is there any distinct or any clear differences, specific to shopper demographics? I said as it relates to return cost methods, ship methods, and in terms of and Ari, you might be able to speak to this in terms of how things are handled when it comes to the return, if not necessarily if something's an undeliverable, but let's say that they don't want it back. So are there any changes there when it comes to the demographics of the shoppers? Helen or Aria, it's either way.
I mean, we do offer a bunch of alternative options for the retailer to pick besides just the standard return from our return center. So to Helen's point, the consumer just wants to have, or the shopper in this case, just wants to have the refund. And that's like the first mile piece. So, the rest of the process really is just up to debate for the retailer to pick. So when it comes to like the processing at the return center, and also, the last mile move for us to return the goods, if that's the retailer's choice, to their warehouse in the US. So, sometimes the retailer may not want to even deal with that last mile move, and they'll want us to have a alternative for us to get the return and processed and taken care of. But they want more of, they want to avoid the shopper to keep the goods for whatever reason that is. So like, for example, a lot of like cosmetics or beauty related verticals, those type of goods, typically they don't want them to be returned. They just want us to receive the goods from the shopper, and they want us to destroy or donate them, for that matter, pending risk and legal requirements. So they can have the goods back, and that kind of reduces some costs for the retailer side as well. Because typically those type of moves can be something a little bit less costly than the typical last mile move that we would see for the retailers.
Okay. Interesting.
Can we move on? Let's move on to convenience, right? Helen and Ari, right?
Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining today. And we look forward to continuing a conversation on the returns topic on our next podcast, which will be June 19th.
If you want to support our podcast, the number one thing you can do is share it on your social media and tag Asendia.
That helps us get the word out, and we really appreciate it.
Be sure to subscribe and download our podcast. If you want to learn more about today's topic, email us at ecommerce.usa@asendia.com and check back frequently for new discussions on e-commerce shipping to Canada and worldwide.